In this video, I'm going to walk you through the process of getting Excel to create a bar graph to look at means and standard errors. This is a very simple process, and I'm going to focus on the most clicks necessary to do it. Before I get started, I should say that where you find your menus may differ from where I find my menus, depending on which version of Excel you have. Mac Excel is a little bit different now from PC Excel, but all of the commands are there. They're just put into a different place. Don't be afraid to poke around and try to find where things are. The other thing with Excel is that there are often more than one way to get to a command. So I often use the menus, and other people prefer to use the icons. All right. These are the data that we worked with in the previous video on basic descriptive statistics. You can see I've got my control treatment group, my HS treatment group. Again, what those mean doesn't matter. And I've calculated the mean, the variance, the standard deviation, the sample size, and the standard error. I'm again going to create a new worksheet so that I can work on a copy of the data for my graph. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm just going to call it graph mean germination, which is what I'm looking at. I'm going to go to my data, copy it. Here we are, copy. Go to my new worksheet. Just plunk down the cursor, and again do a paste values so that I have the numbers. Now I only want to graph the mean and the standard error, so I can get rid of variance, standard deviation, and sample size. I have to have those calculated if I'm going to do t-tests on them, but I don't need to graph them, so I can get rid of these cells. I can just move those cells up, and now I've got my mean and my standard error. I'm going to click in a cell, and I'm going to go up here to my Insert menu and insert a chart. And I'm going to choose a column chart, and I'm going to just do the simplest column, which is a clustered column chart. Now, I have an empty graph. I've done it this way so that I get an empty graph, so I can use a function to absolutely define what I want graphed. A lot of people like to highlight what they're going to graph. Sometimes Excel misinterprets that highlighting, and you have to fiddle with it to make sure you've got it right. This way I can use the chart source data option, and I can actually define my data more precisely. That's especially important if you've got 2 or 3 data series that you want to add. This is only one data series. It's the same Y variable with 2 different X categories, so I'm going to add a data series. I'm going to delete the Y values and highlight my means. I'm going to add X-axis labels, which is Control and HS. And if I do that, I've got my mean control, my mean value of percent germination, or proportion germination rather, for the honeysuckle treatment group, and I've got my graph. Excuse me. I never present means without presenting the standard error, so I'm going to click on my bar. I'm going to go up to the Format menu, Format Data Series, add in error bars. I want to add in both so that I have a bar that reaches up and a bar that reaches down. So I show the positive standard error and the negative standard error. And then here's the one tricky thing with Excel. Excel offers you this option for standard error. The problem with clicking this radio button is that Excel doesn't calculate standard error correctly. Instead, I'm going to use the custom option. I'm going to specify my value. I'm going to highlight both the standard errors, the one for control and the one for honeysuckle. Then I'm going to go to my negative value, highlight both my standard errors, the one for control and the one for honeysuckle, and click OK. Second OK. And now I have my graph that has the mean and the standard errors. Excel is smart enough that when I highlight both the control and the honeysuckle, it knows that it puts the standard error that's associated with control on the control bar and the standard error that's associated with honeysuckle on the honeysuckle bar. The positive and negative refer to the directions, so I have to highlight it once for the one that goes up and the other one for the one that goes down. It's the same standard error, it's just that it's plotting it one in the positive direction and the other in the negative direction. This graph is not quite ready for submission yet. There are a few things I need to add to it. First thing, I've only got one series, so I can take out that. So I'll highlight that and delete it. The second thing is I need axis labels. So I'm going to go up here to my chart layout menu, and I've got an option here to add axis titles. I want to have my horizontal axis title be something like treatment. You could get more descriptive than that. I want my y-axis title, the vertical axis title. I'm going to do a rotated one so that I can read it sideways. This might be mean proportion germination. Because it's a mean, I don't have units, so I don't have to worry about units. I'm not going to put a title on it, so if I click on the graph and again go up to axis titles, there's an option, or a chart layout rather, there's an option here for a chart title. Remember, we're going to put the chart title in the legend, so I'm just going to leave that blank. The final thing are these gray grid bars. Some people like them in and find them helpful. Some people like to take them out. I'm going to leave that completely up to you. If you find them helpful so that you can look at the values, then leave them in. If you find them distracting, you can just highlight them and take them out. The other thing that I want to work at here is my y-axis scale. Note that here that it starts at 0.72, and I really want it to start at 0. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go up to Format Axis, and I'm going to make my minimum 0. There. That makes my data scale from 0, and I can see that there really isn't a great deal of difference between these two values, and that the amount of error or precision is fairly small. When I had my axis scaled with the minimum being 0.72, it sort of maximized the difference between the two bars. So this is my graph. I would be able to put this graph into a Word document, write the narrative paragraph underneath it, and that would be a complete graph for submission. This graph would get you an A. It's got all the elements that it needs. It's got the bars. It's got the error measure, the standard error. It's got an x-axis label. It's got a y-axis label. It's got clear scaling. So that's a perfectly acceptable. In fact, that's an A graph.